Marvel Zombies, when Earth's mightiest heroes became its deadliest threat. Imagine a world where the Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four are no longer Earth's defenders, but its greatest predators. That is the horrific reality of Marvel Zombies, where a mysterious virus from another dimension infects Earth's heroes, turning them into insatiable, flesh-eating undead. Unlike typical zombies, these versions of Captain America, Iron Man, and Spider-Man retain their intelligence and superpowers, making them far deadlier. They speak, strategize, and even feel regret, but their hunger always wins. One of the most chilling moments in the series comes when Spider-Man, horrified after devouring Aunt May and Mary Jane, still cannot stop himself from hunting for more victims. Worse yet, these creatures aren't mindless. They plan. When Galactus arrives on Earth, the zombie heroes defeat and consume him, absorbing his godlike power. This grants them cosmic abilities, allowing them to spread their infection across the universe. What began as a simple virus quickly spirals into an unstoppable plague. Marvel Zombies is terrifying because it takes our beloved heroes and strips them of everything but their hunger. They still think like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, and Peter Parker, but they have no humanity left. The Batman who laughs, when Gotham's protector becomes its worst nightmare. Bruce Wayne has always walked a thin line between hero and monster. His entire existence is fueled by obsession, paranoia, and a deep, unresolved trauma. But what if something tipped him over the edge? In one horrifying alternate universe, Batman finally kills the Joker. But as the Clown Prince of Crime dies, he releases a purified strain of his toxin, infecting Bruce Wayne and turning him into something unthinkable. A hybrid of Batman's intelligence and Joker's madness. This new entity, the Batman who laughs, is Batman without morality, without restraint. He sees not only Gotham, but the entire multiverse as his playground of chaos. His spiked visor, constantly obscuring his eyes, symbolizes his complete detachment from humanity. He doesn't fight crime. He orchestrates elaborate nightmares, turning former allies into twisted, corrupted versions of themselves. One of his most chilling acts is in Dark Knights, Metal, where he enslaves a young Bruce Wayne from another universe, transforming him into a rabid, Jokerized version of Robin. This grotesque army of demonic Robins follows him like feral dogs, a perverse reflection of the Bat family he once cherished. The Batman who laughs is terrifying because he embodies the idea that Batman was always one bad day away from becoming something far worse than any villain he ever faced. Injustice Superman, when absolute power consumes the last son of Krypton. Superman represents the ideal, truth, justice, and selfless heroism. But Injustice asks a terrifying question. What happens if the strongest being on Earth decides that freedom is too dangerous? It all begins with the Joker. In a single act of calculated evil, the Clown Prince of Crime tricks Superman into killing Lois Lane, who is pregnant with his child. Devastated beyond reason, Superman murders the Joker in cold blood. But it doesn't stop there. In his grief, he comes to believe that free will itself is the problem. He begins executing criminals without trial, forcing all nations under his rule. Batman leads a resistance against him, but Superman, once his closest ally, sees any opposition as treason. Even Wonder Woman, who originally supports him, begins to fear what he is becoming. One of the most chilling moments in Injustice is when Superman brutally kills Shazam, a teenager, simply because he dares to challenge him. With each act of violence, Superman convinces himself that he is doing what is necessary. This Superman is terrifying because he doesn't see himself as a villain. He believes he is saving the world, but in truth, he has become the very thing he once fought against. An unrelenting dictator, proving that even the purest of heroes can fall. Dark Phoenix, the cosmic horror of unlimited power. Jean Grey's transformation into the Dark Phoenix is one of the most disturbing arcs in X-Men history. When she bonds with the Phoenix Force, she gains nearly limitless power, but also loses her sense of self. At first, she tries to use her new abilities for good, but as the Phoenix consumes her, she becomes something terrifying, a godlike entity that views life as insignificant. In one of the most infamous moments in Marvel history, she obliterates an entire planet of 5 billion people without hesitation. The tragedy of Dark Phoenix is that Jean is aware of what she's becoming. There are moments where she fights against it, struggling to hold onto her humanity, but the Phoenix Force's hunger is too great. She spirals further into destruction, and in the end, the only way to stop her is for her to die. Old Man Logan, when the Wolverine is broken. In a world where the villains finally won, Logan is a man haunted by the past. He swore never to use his claws again, not because he had a change of heart, but because he killed the X-Men. Manipulated by Mysterio's illusions, Logan was tricked into slaughtering his own teammates, believing them to be enemies. When he finally sees the truth, he is shattered beyond repair. He vanishes, retreating into a life of quiet suffering, refusing to fight ever again. But the world doesn't let him rest. Forced back into action, Logan embarks on a road trip through a post-apocalyptic wasteland ruled by twisted versions of his former enemies. He is older, slower, and burdened with endless regret. This is not Wolverine at his most powerful. This is Wolverine at his most broken. What makes Old Man Logan so terrifying is its sense of hopelessness. He isn't fighting to win, he's just trying to survive in a world where heroism is dead. Venomized heroes. When the symbiote takes over, the Venom symbiote enhances a hero's strengths, but it also magnifies their worst impulses. Throughout various Marvel comics, heroes like Spider-Man, Captain America, and even Doctor Strange have bonded with the symbiote, becoming something darker and more dangerous. Unlike Eddie Brock, who struggles to control Venom, these heroes often lose themselves completely, consumed by the alien parasite. In Venomverse, an entire army of symbiote-infected heroes and villains clash in a grotesque war. Their minds are no longer their own, their bodies twisted into monstrous new forms. These venomized versions of heroes remind us that even the purest warriors are vulnerable to corruption. Red Sun Superman, the communist overlord. What if Superman had crash-landed in Soviet Russia instead of Kansas? Red Sun explores this terrifying possibility, depicting the Man of Steel as an enforcer of the Soviet Union's oppressive regime. Instead of being raised on the ideals of truth and justice, this version of Superman grows up believing in absolute control, loyalty to the state, and the elimination of any opposition. His power is no longer wielded to inspire, it is used to subjugate. This Superman does not see himself as a tyrant, but as a savior who must guide humanity, even if it means stripping them of their freedom. He silences dissenters, enforces government rule with unstoppable strength, and watches over the world not as a guardian, but as an overlord. In one of the most chilling moments of the story, Red Sun Superman lobotomizes his enemies instead of killing them, turning them into mindless drones who no longer resist his authority. This horrifying approach to control proves that even the purest hero, when raised under the wrong ideology, can become something monstrous. Dark Beast, the twisted Hank McCoy. Hank McCoy, better known as Beast, is one of the most intelligent and kind-hearted members of the X-Men, but in the Age of Apocalypse timeline, he is something completely different. This version of Beast is not a noble scientist, he is a sadistic geneticist who performs horrifying experiments on mutants and humans alike. Nicknamed Dark Beast, this Hank McCoy operates with no ethical restraint. His experiments create grotesque hybrids, mutilated creatures, and mindless slaves for Apocalypse's empire. Unlike his mainstream counterpart who struggles with his appearance but remains a hero, Dark Beast fully embraces his monstrous nature. One of his most disturbing actions is when he begins conducting experiments on children, seeing them as nothing more than test subjects. His lack of remorse and fascination with suffering make him one of the most disturbing X-Men villains ever created. Superior Spider-Man. When Peter Parker's body is stolen, Spider-Man's sense of responsibility defines him. But what happens when someone else takes over his body? Someone without that same moral compass. In Superior Spider-Man, the dying mind of Dr. Octopus transfers itself into Peter Parker's body, completely overriding Peter's consciousness. Now possessing all of Spider-Man's strength, agility, and intellect, Otto Octavius becomes a darker, more violent version of the hero. This Spider-Man does not pull his punches. He beats criminals to the brink of death, installs surveillance systems across New York to spy on civilians, and eliminates his enemies permanently rather than subduing them. To the world, he is still Spider-Man. But his methods become increasingly terrifying. One of the most haunting aspects of this story is Peter Parker's consciousness, which still lingers within his own mind, helpless as Otto controls his body. It's a nightmarish scenario. What if a hero's power was hijacked by someone far more ruthless? The Void, the darkest side of the Sentry. Sentry, often called Marvel's answer to Superman, has the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. But with that power comes a horrifying secret: his dark alter ego, the Void. The Void is not simply an evil version of the Sentry, it is the other half of his psyche, a living nightmare that lurks inside him, waiting to emerge. Unlike most corrupt superhero variants, the Void is not a separate entity, it is a part of Sentry himself, something he cannot escape. Whenever the Void takes control, it unleashes unimaginable destruction. It has torn Ares, the god of war, in half. It has slaughtered entire cities. It is an unstoppable, eldritch force of chaos that thrives on despair and destruction. What makes the Sentry terrifying is his inability to fully suppress this monster within him. He knows that at any moment the Void could return, and when it does, nothing can stop it. The Flash, Black Racer, and the Death of Speed. The Flash is often depicted as the heart of the Justice League, but in Final Crisis, he becomes something much darker. The host of the Black Racer, the cosmic embodiment of death itself. The Black Racer is a force that claims those who try to outrun fate. When it chooses a host, they become an unstoppable harbinger of doom, racing toward the inevitable. In one of the most terrifying moments in Final Crisis, the Black Racer merges with Barry Allen, turning the fastest man alive into death's very messenger.